Welcome to the Entertainment Collective podcast,
your one-stop resource for insights to working in the entertainment industry.
I'm Jonathan Pushkar.
And I'm Dallas Jack.
All right, here we are, the Entertainment Collective. I'm Jonathan Pushkar.
I'm Dallas Jack.
And we're here with Bill Cinque. And Bill's resume can speak for itself, but we're going to dive all into it tonight and talk all about Bill Cinque and his adventures in the music business. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. I got off a plane about 2 hours ago. So when you say let's dive in, I'm as in as I can be.
So awesome. are you when we talk planes, are you the type that when you get off you're rearing to go kind of thing, or are you more like just get me to a bed and let's stop?
No, I don't sleep.
Okay.
I'm one of those guys. I do not sleep. I drive my girlfriend crazy. When I'm on the road with the band, I'm kind of the joke because the security guys that are up all night, they know me by name because I'm the one who's wandering the halls.
You're just going.
Yeah. And they keep saying to me, oh, well, do you sleep from 9 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon? I go, nope. You know, I take a nap or something, but I just don't sleep.
How many hours do you think you sleep in a 24-hour period?
As a rule, I might sleep 3 hours consecutively, and then somewhere along the line, somewhere between the afternoon showings of Matlock and Murder, She Wrote, I'll catch an hour, and then I'm good.
Have you always been wired that way?
I have. Wired is the word.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a little...
no pun intended.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, 7 years old, we were poor. I don't mind telling you that. We were poor. But I had a television. We had a little black and white television in my bedroom. And I would watch television all night. The Johnny Carson show, which is before your time, but the Johnny Carson show used to be on, and it used to be on for an hour and a half from 11:30 to 1. And I remember one time coming into my 4th grade class, I guess it was, and my teacher said something about Carl Sagan, if you know Carl Sagan, the astronomer. And I said, yeah, I raised my hand, and she's like, little Billy in the back of the class, what do you know about Carl Sagan? You're in 4th grade. And I said, no, I know he has this book and that book, and I've seen him speak. And she said, that's incredible. Where did you see that? And I said, I saw him on Johnny Carson last night. And to me, that made perfect sense. Well, the teacher was on the phone with my parents the next day saying, what is your 7-year-old son doing up at 1 o'clock in the morning? So I've always just been that guy. Yeah. I just never slept. My mind is always racing.
Okay.
And so it's kind of adrenaline, a little bit of an adrenaline high most of the time.
Wow.
And I'm really excited to be here. I'm genuinely excited to be here.
Well, that's awesome.
We're excited to have you. So let's dive in and talk about your career a little bit. From musical directing to production to TV to being a bass player in all sizes of bands. We can just dive in and go anywhere, but let's talk about life on the road, touring. What was your first tour? Like, how did you get started touring?
Yeah, actually, even before, I'll give you like a precursor to the touring. I was in New York. I was very fortunate to, again, I'm 60 years old today. This year I've turned 60. When I was 19, Frank Sinatra, the Eagles, and disco were all on the radio at the same time, and that was a great way to grow up because you just learn songs.
Yeah, sure.
And so I was playing in bands 4 nights a week for all, most of my 20s. I moved down to Alabama from New York, which does not sound like a good career move, but it worked out. Yeah. And the first thing that happened, I'll tell you a quick story, which is in the book, and we can talk about the book later, but in this little town of 5,000 people, walked into a music store in Alabama and said, hey, can I give you my card? I'm going to be moving down here in a couple of weeks. If you know of anybody that needs a bass player, and this guy says, nope, I don't even need your card. I'm not interested. I said, well, I just wanted to know if you knew of anybody. He said, no, there's no work down here. Don't even bother. As I'm arguing with him, and I got a little uppity with him because I'm a New Yorker, and I said, hey, look, man, I'm just trying to be a nice guy. Take my card and take a thumbtack and put it on the corkboard. That's all I'm asking. as I'm saying this guy walks in. This is my life, you know. Guy walks in and taps me on the shoulder, literally taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is John. Did you say you're a singing bass player? Because we're just firing our bass player, and we work 3 and 4 nights a week. We're on the road. If you come down here, we'd love to have you."
Wow.
So I auditioned. You know, it was crazy. So my first road gig was like a club band, but it was on the road a couple of days a week. And I was already in my 30s. I was 31 years old. I didn't start doing that stuff until then. A couple of years later, and then I was out in Los Angeles. I got a pretty decent gig with a blues guy that we did some traveling. When I started traveling more was when I had the great opportunity to work with a bunch of the old British invasion bands from the 60s. And depending on the age of your audience, if they're like you, I'm going to say, I'm about to really impress everybody's grandparents. I'm going to be a big hit with their grandparents. I started working with people like Chad and Jeremy and Peter and Gordon, Herman's Hermits, Billy J. Kramer. These are all guys that came over kind of with the Beatles.
Yeah. Making My Heart Skip a Beat.
Oh,
yeah.
All of my favorites.
Which is where I met Jonathan. And so we started playing these kind of things, and then we ventured into some of the bands kind of fractured. So I can't technically say I played with the Hollies, but one of the guys from the Hollies, the Bay City Rollers, all these bands, Badfinger, all these bands from the British invasion and a little later, and it was great training ground because you were not only on the road, we had a core band of 4 guys. And we had to back up all these bands. So one night we'd be playing the Abbey Road record. The next night we would be Badfinger. A night after that, Jerry and the Pacemakers, which is one of my all-time favorite bands.
Man.
We actually got to play with Jerry Marsden of Jerry and the Pacemakers, which was such a brilliant thing. And so it was all that stuff that I was doing now in my late 40s and 50s is what most people I knew were doing in their 20s, and they gave it up, and now they're dentists and doctors or truck drivers, whatever else.
Yeah.
I kind of turned that upside down. So my touring, I got the biggest gig of my life when I was 55 years old. I'll try not to give away too much. I'll let you ask questions, but you know. So I started playing in clubs, taking any gig I could get, got proficient at that. I learned how to book myself because no one else would. I played guitar. I started playing bass because it's the old joke, but you know, guitar players don't want to play bass. You go to a jam, there's 35 guitar players, there's 15 sax players, but there's no bass players. So I just started playing bass out of necessity.
Yeah.
And that has served me very well. It's carried me through. I always considered myself a singer first, and then a guitar player second, and a bass player third. And I always got the gig like, well, we want you as a singer. If you can play some guitar, that's fine. You know, if you play some bass, that's fine. I wound up getting the greatest gig of my life as simply the bass player. I didn't even have a microphone.
Wow.
So, you know, I just covered a lot of ground from your simple question, but the road to me was completely different than the road for most other guys that I knew, because most other guys I knew were done by the time they were 35.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they started a family. I kind of went in the other direction. I didn't start going on the road till I was 35.
What do you think was the key to making it so you were more successful later in life? Because I know a lot of people will be like, oh, we aged out kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because as with most great questions, it's not really a singular answer.
Sure.
You know, it's a perfect storm of, you know, luck and hard work, and we can talk about all those old adages that people give you with, you know, one door closes, another one opens, and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I have notoriously been the hardest working musician for 40 years.
Yeah.
I was the guy who loaded the car, couldn't see out the back window because I had speakers up to the ceiling. I came and picked you up because you didn't have a car and drove you home. I paid for the rehearsal when no one else had it.
Wow.
You know, no one else had the money. I was that guy. So I was not to be denied.
Yeah.
You know, I am not the guy who stops at the 8-yard line and kicks the field goal. I'm going for it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't go, then it doesn't go. And I don't blame anybody, and I don't take all the credit when it works well, but I'm that guy. So when everybody else gave up, I won't even say gave up, but when they changed direction, I wished them well and waved to them in the rearview mirror. But,
Yeah.
you know, I just kept on trucking, as they said in the 70s.
Yeah.
Persistence, tenacity, that's what has defined you and changed your career in that regard. Do you think it's something that is instilled in you? Is it something you learn? Is it something you're taught?
Again, this is so great because I don't know if you know our listeners understand this, but this is not pre-planned here. We're just kind of winging it. But I always tell this story when I get the chance. My dad was one of the greatest guys ever. My dad was one of the hardest working people I've ever met. My dad was 350 pounds. He was this big, fat Italian guy, was the nicest guy in the world, but was also the strongest guy in the world at the same time.
I love it.
My very first job, I was working in the supermarket when I was in high school. One of my jobs as a 17-year-old, you know, was everybody else would go home and I had to mop the floor. And I will tell you, if you ever want to know how big a store is, mop the floor. You'll find out. Up until that point, you don't really know how big it is.
Yeah.
When you just have to mop the whole thing. So I came home one night and I said to my dad, he said, "Wow, you're late." I said, "Yeah, Dad, you know, I got this new job where they make me mop the floor at the end of the night." Now, I said this. I want to be clear as to who is saying what.
Right.
Little Billy says, "Yeah, I have to mop the floor, but, you know, I'm okay doing that because it's not going to be like that forever." And my dad's answer was this. "Really? Who told you that?" I was thinking my dad would say, "Of course, son, you can be president. You can be whatever you want. This is only a stepping stone because you're going to be, you know, going on to do great things." My dad said, "Did someone tell you that you have a better job around the corner?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, did somebody give you a raise? Did someone tell you I'm going to pay you 3 times as much even though you're mopping the floor?" I said, "No, Dad, no one said anything like that." He said, "Well, then look at what's right in front of you here. Right now, your job is to mop the floor. That means you need to mop it better than anybody who's ever mopped a floor in their entire life, because this might be what you do. And if it's what you do for the rest of your life, you'll do it with pride, you'll do it well." I don't know if my dad ever remembered saying that, but it stuck with me. That was every bit of 44 years ago.
Wow.
That stuck with me, that you can dream all you want, but there's something right in front of you that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do that, you're just assuring yourself of failure.
Yeah.
So the tenacity, when you say, was that instilled in you? Yeah, I watched a guy who, my goodness, God bless my parents, you know, they're no longer here, but they worked harder than anybody I'd ever known to this day.
Yeah.
When I think of what I would call a hard day at work for me is, oh, what, I have to sing a couple of more songs, or I have to be in the studio a little earlier. That was not a tough day for, you know, a man and wife trying to raise 5 children in 3 rooms in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So it was instilled in me at a young age. It wasn't necessarily about music. It was more about life. And I hold that precious. I really do hold on to that. I've never lost sight of that. And I hope I never do lose sight of that.
Wow, that's amazing.
What an incredible answer.
So, talking about, you know, that being your guiding compass, or one of your guiding compasses at least, your book, which we have sitting here, The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. Depending on who you ask, you've been more than marginally successful. But to that point, you know, you talked about the tenacity and having that value instilled in you. At what point, if at any point, did you ever feel like, wow, like, it can't get better than this? And then it did, and then it did, and then it did.
Yeah, I'm hoping that there are people of all ages listening to us talk right now, because I got a gig in California when I moved. Well, I'll back up a step, and again, this is referenced in my book. It's not at all silly for me. It's very, 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 very meaningful for me. When I was 19, I got a gig with my first band at an all-girls college. I'm just waiting for the entire audience to catch their breath after I said that, because 3 single 19-year-old guys in an all-girls college. Yeah. The mathematical possibilities were endless.
So to requote the question, it can't get better than this.
Yes. Yes.
Didn't Jan and Dean have a song about that? 2 girls for
Every boy, yeah. This would have been like, 78 girls for every boy. Yeah. So we played this place, Marymount College in Tarrytown, New York, which is about an hour north of New York City. We played, and they just went nuts. And we were playing, it was almost like country rock in the 70s. Bands like Loggins and Messina. We did some Beatles. The Eagles were 1977. They were probably at their height,
Sure.
And I remember being in the moment, standing there saying, how could it ever be better than this? How could it really ever be better than this right here? What I laugh at is I went back there a year later, and in my mind's eye, there were 300 screaming women. I don't think you could have possibly fit more than 50 people in this room. But in my mind's eye, it was, it was huge. I went from that being one of the greatest gigs ever. And then with Peter and Gordon. Peter and Gordon was a tremendous pop duo back in the 60s. They had a great song called World Without Love. And the chorus is, I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. It was written by Paul McCartney. It was the biggest record in the world. I grew up on that music. I got the gig with Peter and Gordon, and one day I get a phone call saying, let's have dinner tonight. Is it okay if I mention some of my players?
Absolutely.
Jeff Allen Ross is my great buddy, my partner in crime. We've done more gigs than I could count with all the bands that I have mentioned up to this point.
Yeah.
One of the greats, too.
Yeah.
One of just an amazing, amazing individual.
Brian Pothier, one of my favorite guitar players, and Steve Aho, who is one of the greatest drummers in the world, who now lives in Austria. The 4 of us get a phone call that says essentially, we have a gig next, I think it was a Tuesday night. Next Tuesday night. This is a Tuesday. So 7 days from now. And the question is obviously, where is the gig? And the answer is Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
This is not a pregnant pause on my part. This is not for theater. I still say that and kind of go, wait a minute. I went from playing in an all-girls school to 55 19-year-olds was the greatest gig ever. Now it's Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
We went to Carnegie Hall and played, and I'm a New Yorker. I cried.
Yeah.
I literally cried.
Yeah.
So we played Carnegie Hall with Peter and Gordon, and I remember the announcer. It was a tribute to Elton John. So there was a lot of different bands there.
Wow.
And it was some wonderful talent. And the announcer is kind of in one of the wings, is a stage right, and she says this: our next act was one of the biggest acts in the British invasion, and in before she finishes, people are already clapping.
Oh, yeah.
And we're walking out, and I'm just tingling, And I remember standing on stage as we were playing, and I remember just saying to myself, okay, I really need to be in the moment. This can't be one of these, oh, it was a blur, and I didn't get a chance to appreciate it. I need to be right here. Yeah. My sisters were up in the balcony. Incredible night, incredible night. That, to that point, would have been, okay, in all due respect to my good girlfriends at Marymount College, I think Carnegie Hall had to tip the scale on that one. So, yeah, Carnegie Hall was the biggest up to that point.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. So how old were you when you played Carnegie Hall?
Well, that was 2009, I think. So my math is so terrible, 51.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm a late bloomer when it comes to, And the title of the book being Marginally Successful, I wrote the book even before that. I wrote the book like 6 months before that.
Yeah.
I didn't include, I mean, I'm sorry, not 6 months before that. I completely misaligned things here.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I wrote the book after that, so I included that, but it did not include my latest foray, which is why the term marginal comes into play sometimes.
So let's dive into that latest foray. You have been on the road with Neil Diamond.
With Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yes,
Like one of the
that's insane.
biggest acts
Absolutely
in the world.
insane.
It was insane for me too.
Yeah.
The way that came about is possibly my most favorite story. You would think I would get better at telling it because I tell it almost every day. But essentially what happened was one of those tours that we were just talking about with the oldies bands, which I love that so much because every song we did was a hit.
Yeah.
We were playing up in Northern California. There's a great drummer, played with Billy Joel for years by the name of Liberty DeVito. Did you ever?
One of the greats.
So I got to play with Liberty. Again, this is what I mean. Every one of the things I'm mentioning was a highlight. It's not like that was a throwaway. I was like, oh my God, I'm playing with Liberty DeVito.
We got to talk about Liberty just for a second.
Yeah.
Sure.
Liberty
Yeah.
was Billy Joel's drummer on all the big stuff. And I mean, you hear like Only the Good Die Young with that. I mean, that's him. He's just
Iconic.
coming up with this
He's the
iconic,
greatest.
legendary.
He's the funniest guy. He's just a riot. And so I'm up in Northern California, and Liberty lives in New York. And we're up there together, and here's the last night of the gig. And I said, hey, well, I guess I'll see you if I ever get to New York. And he said, well, actually, I'm going back to L.A. tomorrow. And I said, well, what are you doing there? He said, I'm doing this like a panel discussion. I wouldn't even know what else to call it. I said, oh, where are you doing that? And he says, at the California, the School of the Arts, that they call it Cal Arts.
Yeah.
It's down the street from my girlfriend's house. Okay, now, before I go any further into this, let's check our watches, because this story gets a little long, and I don't want to...
We're good.
We're
Okay.
good. As much time as you need.
So anybody who's listening to this, grab a sandwich now. Because I don't want anybody getting hypoglycemic on me if this goes
Yep.
too long.
Yep.
'Cause you're not going to eat for a while. So here's what happens. I said, Liberty, sorry, inside. We're such good friends. I said, Lib, it's down the street from my girlfriend's house. It's only 15 minutes from my house. Maybe I'll stop by and see you. This is where the story gets weird and gets a little long, and the only thing I will say is this. I will promise you, I am not exaggerating, I'm not editorializing, I'm telling you as factually as I can tell you. I get off the plane in Los Angeles, and it's, afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm driving around doing my stuff, like doing laundry and going to the bank and the post office, because I haven't been home for 2 weeks, right? We've been...
Right.
So I am on my way up to see Liberty and this panel discussion at this school. It is down the street from my girlfriend's house, which is now where I live, but at the time, I know exactly where it is. I drive past it twice a day. I cannot explain how this happened, so there's no sense asking me. I couldn't find the school. It's a university. It's a campus.
It's not small.
I can't find it, and I'm driving in circles, and I'm looking at my GPS, and I'm saying to myself, okay, maybe I'm jet lagged, maybe I'm just tired, maybe I don't know what. I pull into a parking lot of a mall, and this is after, I'm going to say at least 20 minutes, because I don't want to exaggerate, but certainly 20 minutes. I pulled into a parking lot, and I pulled the chair back in my car, and I sat back and reclined and just went, okay, let me decompress, because I'm starting to think I'm losing my mind. Right? I sit back, and this is where it gets a little on the spiritual side. I hope I'm not offending anybody's sensibility. I'm not preaching any religion or anything, but I sat back and I just went, okay. I look up to the heavens and I said, okay, Dad, somewhere up there, you're going to have to tell me, why is this happening right here? Please tell me that there's a takeaway. Tell me that there's some silver lining, because I think I'm losing my mind. I'm driving in circles. I'm in my own neighborhood, essentially, and I can't find a college campus. It might sound funny on one hand. On the other hand, I'm thinking, am I losing my mind?
Yeah.
Right? I hang out for a second, and I had an earpiece for my phone, right? I pull out of the driveway of this mall. I'm going to start looking again, see if I can find my destination, where I'm going to see my good friend Liberty do this panel discussion. My phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize, so I answer. I said, hi, this is Bill. Who's this? And I can't hear the other person. My earpiece is falling out. My ears are plugged up because I just got off a plane. I'm getting frustrated. I'm fumbling with my earpiece while I'm driving, and this is what I do. I take the phone, I say, excuse me, whoever this is, can you just give me 15 seconds, because I can't hear you. I pull back into that parking space that I just pulled out of. And I do realize the story is getting long, but this is how important it was for me to set this up. I get the earpiece back in, I said, yeah, look, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything. Let's start from the top. This is Bill. Who am I talking to? And the guy says, well, my name is Sam, and as I was saying, we're looking for a bass player, and you come very highly recommended. And I said, well, that's great, Sam. What's the name of the band? He said, as I already said, but I didn't hear that part. He was talking for 20 seconds. I didn't hear it. My earpiece was falling out. My head's plugged up. I'm looking around for a campus that I can't find in my own neighborhood. I think I'm losing my mind. I'm talking to my deceased dad looking for answers. This is kind of I'm at the crossroads in my life.
Yeah.
Sitting in a mall, you know.
Wow.
And I said, so what's the name of the band? And there's a little bit of a hesitation. He says, Neil Diamond. Now, I promise you, I'm not saying this for the joke. I said, what's the name of the band? He said, Neil Diamond. And I waited for the word tribute. Right? It's a Neil Diamond tribute band.
Yeah.
And because I'm the cat about town who knows every song. Everybody knows, hey, call Bill Cinque because he knows all these songs and he learns fast and he sings background vocals. I'm thinking, well, yeah, this is going to work fine.
Yeah.
I said, what? And he said, yeah, Neil Diamond. And so, listen, you come very highly recommended. And I said, from who? Now, there's a tremendous producer who I hope you know his work, by the name of Don Was. Okay. They said to me, this voice, mysterious voice on the phone says, well, you were very highly recommended by Don Was. And I'm thinking for a second, and I'm trying to think on my feet, and I said, look, Sam, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here, but can we double check that you have the right phone number here, because I don't really know Don Was, and the last thing I want to do is walk into a Neil Diamond gig to audition and have people say, who is this guy?
Right.
You know, we must have made a mistake. So he says, no, well, hold on. Has the phone number, has my email address, has my pertinent information? He said, yeah, no, you're the guy we're looking for. So I said, wow, that's interesting. And Sam says, I'm glad I caught you because actually I've been calling you, you know, for 2 days. I said, no, I didn't get any calls. He said, no, actually we have another phone number for you. He had my old phone number. Now, again, I'm just trying to keep you kind of online here because this is all going to make sense. All these scattered bits of information is all going to make sense in a minute. I said, well, what do you need from me, Sam? Sure, of course I'm interested. He said, well, I just wanted to see if you were available and we'd like to talk to you sometime this week. I said, great. He said, I'll call you back. I said, okay. I drive up the hill, here's the university. Okay, here's the college. I would be embarrassed to show you a map, to show you where I was sitting. You could walk there. I must have drove past it 6 times, and I can never explain what I did getting off at the wrong exit or not. just not looking? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But here I am. I drive up the hill, and my phone rings again. It's Sam. Hey, can you come in tomorrow? I said, well, I guess. Okay, let me call you back. Well, to make a long story short, even though this is really long, I go inside to this symposium thing that I'm there to begin with to see Liberty DeVito speak on the music business, right?
Yeah.
You walk in the door, the first thing they say is, turn off your phone, you put it in a bucket over here, pick it up when you come out. Okay, I said, all right. I go inside. It's not only Liberty DeVito, it's a guy who I am so happy to say I count him as one of my friends, even though we don't see each other a lot. One of the greatest bass players of all time, played with Aretha Franklin, played with the Young Rascals, Jerry Jamat. If you don't know who he is, look him up.
Yeah.
I walk in, somebody introduces me to Jerry Jamat, and we have mutual friends, even though I've never met him.
Wow.
Jerry, in addition to just being like the bass guru, is one of the sweetest men you'll ever meet in your life. I said to him, you know, this is interesting because I'm here with Lib, who I played with last night, didn't know he was going to be here. I've been on the road with him for 2 weeks. You're my idol. I run into you. I just got a call from Neil Diamond's band. I don't know what they're going to... And Jerry Jamat gives me a hug and just says, oh, brother, you got this. I said, Jerry, they don't even know me. You don't even know me.
Yeah.
Jerry Jamat says, I can feel it. I can feel your energy. You got this.
Wow.
Now, again, I'm going through all this. I can't even find a college. Why are you entrusting me with the greatest singer-songwriter of all time, and I haven't even met him? So it's the most bizarre set of circumstances. I come out, there's my phone ringing, hello, and Sam says, okay, I know this is kind of unusual. And I was like, well, unusual is this day has been pretty unusual. That's just fitting. And again, I apologize for the length of the story, but here's where it all comes together. Sam says, normally we would do a proper audition and send you material and we'd give you a CD or charts and stuff. He said, how do you feel about just coming in tomorrow and just winging it? And I just said, Sam, I'm a New York Italian. This stuff doesn't scare me. Let's go. Let's roll.
do it.
He goes, okay, I'll call you back with the details. I call my girlfriend. She's screaming, freaking out. Oh, you got this gig. I can feel it. You got this gig. I said, that's 2 people that have told me I got this gig.
Yeah.
And I haven't even...
You're in.
Yeah.
You're in.
I haven't even gone there. Well, the next day, I go down to the studio. I walk in. I got there exactly on time at 3 o'clock. When Sam opened the door, who I had not met yet, I held up my cell phone. It was 3:00. I was not going to be late, but I was not going to be early. I was just going to be there at 3 o'clock. I walked in, talked to them for about 10 minutes, went in the room by myself with headphones, played a couple of songs, and suddenly they said, you want a cup of coffee? You want a sandwich or something? I said, no, I'm thinking they're going to kick you out because the next bass player is coming in, like the cattle call. I said, no, I'm good. They said, well, can you hang out for a couple of minutes? I said, I guess, sure. And it's very awkward because that's not the way auditions go.
No.
I start to walk into the control room and the other door opens and this man walks in and says, hey, Bill, I'm Neil Diamond. To which I responded, yes, I know. I know who you are. I've seen you.
Wow.
Neil Diamond walks in, spins a chair around, sits on it backwards, like leaning on the back of the chair, and says, okay, what do we got here? Let's listen. And they listen back to what I just played and in front of me. I'm melting.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do. So Neil says, well, listen, here's the situation. You're auditioning for the world tour that we're doing in March. This is September 22nd, 2014.
Wow.
He said, we're going away for a little while. We're doing a promo tour because we're promoting our new record. It was a great record called Melody Road. If anybody, Neil Diamond fans, it's an unbelievable record.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, our bass player has been with us for 44 years and he's decided to call it a day. So I said, oh, do you need me for this promotional tour? He said, no, we don't move that fast around here. The guy's been here for 44 years. But, you know, we liked what we heard so far, so we'll get back with you in November or so, and we'll set up a proper audition, and if it goes well, you know, we'll talk about the tour in February, you know, meaning you'll be rehearsing in January. I said, okay. Now, I have to say that after all my talk about all the people I played with and all the gigs I did, I do not read a note of music. Not a note of music. I've never took a lesson on anything in my life. I essentially play left-handed and upside down, meaning I pick with my left hand and the fat string is on the bottom. So whichever way you look at this, it's upside down and backwards.
Wow.
So I could never take lessons. I could never have someone teach me, you know, music because of this. I am the least likely candidate for this gig. I come in, I'm replacing a guy, 44 years, Los Angeles, there's a phenomenal bass player at every traffic light. I don't read music. I've been recommended by one of the greatest producers in the world, Don Was, and I've met him like at cocktail parties and said, hey, how are you? But I don't know him. Yeah. Everything completely bizarre and weird. I shake hands, I give him a copy of my book, literally, figuring I'm never gonna see him again, you know. I didn't get this gig. How could I possibly get the Neil Diamond gig under these circumstances? I pick up my girlfriend and her daughter. We drive home. We're sitting in my little apartment in California, and the phone rings again, and it's Sam's number. I walk down the hall. I said, I'm going to take this in the other room and close the door. And my girlfriend's sitting there on the couch, and I said, there's a Chinese menu right there. Why don't you just grab it, order some food while I'm down the hall?
Yeah.
And Sam says, well, Bill, first of all, we'd like to thank you for coming in today because we know it was under extreme circumstances, which is kind of like the girl at the dance saying, hey, look, you're a great guy, but, you know, this is not going to end well.
You were great today.
This is not going well. You know. I'm sure there's another band out there that will appreciate your skill set, Bill, but, you know, that's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah.
And he said, really appreciate you coming down at the last minute. We know it was kind of stressful. But anyway, Neil really liked what he heard and wanted to know if you'd join us on the promo tour. I said, wow. When is the promo tour? He said, we leave Sunday. This is Tuesday. He said, we leave Sunday. Now, this is what I thought was one of my great comeback lines of all time, and he didn't get it at the other end of the phone. So I'm going to have to spit it out to your audience and see if they get it. So Sam says, I know it's short notice, but we'd like you to join us. We're going to New York and London, and we're doing the BBC, and we're playing the Palladium, the London Palladium. We're coming back. We're going to do the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and the next day do the Today Show, you know, on the Plaza.
Yeah.
So he said, so can you get back to me tomorrow, or do you think you can tell me yes or no now? And I said, well, Sam, let me look at my Millennium at a Glance calendar and see if I have anything going on for the next 1,000 years. Now, I thought that was like, oh, that's so funny. That is so funny.
That was so witty.
And he went, okay, I can wait for you to. I went, oh, come on, there was a joke there, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I can do it. And he said, well, can you come in tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning for a rehearsal? I went in for one rehearsal with the guitar player for 2 hours, and they said, yeah, let's go. So Sunday, I was on a plane. Monday, did our first gig, went 2 weeks with the band. The interesting thing about this very long story, and I will apologize again for having to put in all those kind of seemed to be superfluous details, but here is what I had to kind of go back and figure out. I got lost in my own neighborhood. I don't know how and why that happened. There I was really calling my dad through prayer saying, please tell me what's the takeaway? Why is this happening? This is too bizarre for this to happen. Sam had the wrong phone number. He had been calling me for I think it was 2 days. He wasn't going to call me too many other times. had I been in that symposium on time, my phone would have been in that bucket.
Wow.
I wouldn't have had it with me. So what this means is, here's the biggest gig in my life. The the management is calling me for 2 days, but I'm not around because they have my old phone number. Now they finally get my current phone number, and they're calling me for the next 2 hours that I'll be in this thing without my phone. No, they're moving on to someone else.
Yeah.
You tell me what that means. God, the universe, tremendous coincidence that I wound up taking a half hour running around not knowing where I was, that my earpiece was falling out, everything going against me. And then, as if there wasn't enough against me, now I walk in for the audition with no notice, no charts, no CDs, nothing. I walk in, there's no band, I'm just sitting there with headphones. And Neil Diamond, the greatest singer-songwriter of all time, sits there right in front of me and says to my face, well, we don't need you for this promotional tour because we got that covered. You know, we've had the same guys for 44 years. To call me 2 hours later and say, hey, you know what, Bill? I know you just got off a plane. I know your earpiece was falling out. I knew you were praying in the parking lot to your dad. I knew you got lost in your own neighborhood. I know that you don't read music and you came down here with no preparation. And I know that we have a bass player for 44 years. But guess what? All of that means nothing because you got the gig. Please think about that. I know I just told a very long story.
Yeah.
Think about what has to happen. That's to me was the only thing better than that was like the Big Bang Theory. You know, crawling out of the primordial soup.
Yeah.
You know, I've tried to rationalize it. I can't. I've tried to make sense of it. I can't. I've tried to second guess myself, outthink myself. I've asked other people what they think. It's just one of those, you throw your hands up and you say, wow, just be grateful.
Yeah.
It was the greatest gig ever by anybody's standards. The greatest songs we played, you know, up to that point. I was talking about Carnegie Hall. I played the Hollywood Bowl. I played the LA Forum. I'm a New Yorker. I played Madison Square Garden twice.
Wow.
I was giggling when I saw the schedule 6 months prior.
Wow.
I was giggling for 6 months. I was going to the gym, getting back in shape, jumping in the pool and swimming, just thinking Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
That's why I'm getting in shape. You know,
No better motivation.
No, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, you know, when you ask me a question and ask me for a story, I'm not going to let you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be long, but I'm not going to let you down. So
No, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, talking about the day when you got that phone call, I think that there's so many people, not just in the entertainment industry, but just in real life in general, that you have all of these things stacked against you, literally, even when you're having your worst day. And granted, that may not have been your worst day, but so many things were coming
Sure.
at you. You're lost in your own neighborhood. Your piece isn't working. You just, you know, so many things were going against you on that day, and that's the day everything changed.
I literally still have it in my phone, the initial phone call
Yeah.
from that day. And I don't mind saying this. Every year on that day, I send a gift basket to the Neil Diamond team
Yeah.
Wow.
because I don't mind telling you, and I'm sure that there are great things coming for me. I have great confidence in myself. I have great confidence in the universe. I'm sure that I'm going to do a lot of really cool things, including this interview, which I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah.
But I really think if I were to walk on the moon and be the first bass-playing astronaut, that somewhere in my head I'd still say, well, that was cool, but I'm actually Neil Diamond's bass player. You know,
Wow.
that's kind of what I carry with me. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's your legacy at this point.
it's just it's the greatest. You know, it opens a lot of doors, and I have to just be. I'm going to use the word grateful again. I have to be grateful for the time I had with it, and now it's time to move on. You don't really look at it as something ending. You look at it as something else beginning.
Yeah.
You know, that's the healthiest way to look at it.
That's amazing.
All right, well, that's going to be it for today. Man, what a great conversation with Bill Cinque. He's just got so many great stories, and we're going to have more on next week's episode. So, this has been the Entertainment Collective podcast, and we'll see you